Well, well. I haven't done a podcast in a while. I mean, I have a bunch recorded, but I haven't recorded any. And I haven't posted in a bit because with this time of the year is when all the award pre-nominations happen. So you have to finish off all your projects to get them ready for the nom season. So I've been hard at work getting Ink Motel 2 done and Quarantined, both movies for Alt Erotic. Ink Motel 2 was finished last night with a trailer. It's probably one of the funniest things I've ever done. Well, I mean, the other movies have been pretty amazing. Texas Asshole Massacre, Dawn of the Head, Carjackers, Viking Girls Gone Horny, Hoe Hunters. Ink Motel 1 wasn't a comedy, but it had some funny moments in it. Ink Motel 2 is definitely a comedy. I'm calling it the Grindhouse impregnates film noir with some comedic baby. I play Ivan Dragon in it, a Russian pornographer. We have Josh Gray in it, who plays Duke the Dragon Daybreak. We have Sasha Inc., who owns Alterotic in it. We have Evelyn Inc. It's basically like I did a box cover and I put introducing Evelyn Inc. because this is kind of like her breakout movie, so to speak. I wanted to make her into a Marilyn Monroe looking performer. So what we did was I bought a Marilyn Monroe dress, the dress where the wind hits the dress, and like listen to that. We've had crazy fires here in LA, so I don't know if you could hear it. I could hear it. There's fire trucks zooming past the studio right now. Anyways, back to the topic. I wanted to do a scenario where I'm sitting there in a dark lit room with a cigar and the door swings open, boom, and there's Marilyn. Evelyn Inc. style Marilyn Monroe. So bought the dress, the same dress that Marilyn Monroe had in that infamous scene. We had a fan. We actually did stills on the white that looked freaking amazing of Evelyn getting, the dress being pushed up by wind. We have Samantha Mack, who I've wanted to work for years with, and we finally had a chance to work together. We did a really funny scenario. Amber Luke's in it. The crazy thing with this Amber Luke scene is I shot that last year around this time, right before she left. That was her last trip out. And it was a month before all my health issues happened. The interesting thing is also, by the way, Katie Monroe's in it, who does a really great job. She's really funny. Really funny. She gets tattooed. And then she does a scene with Sasha and Duke Daybreak. Evelyn tattoos me. She tattoos my dead cat's paw on me. Then does a solo in front of me. Then she and Josh tattoo each other and they do a scene. But I'm going to do a whole podcast on both Ink Motels, maybe even later this weekend. So I don't want to get too much into it. I just wanted to update of what's been going on and why I haven't been active on the podcast. I've been finding a lot of old Anabolic stuff. I used to work for Anabolic. And then the interesting thing is, about a week ago, I get a call from Missy Stone. I don't know how many of you remember Missy, but Missy was a pretty big name in the industry years ago. She probably left around maybe 7-8 years ago. Maybe she left. I know her from the first day she got off the plane. She and I became really good friends. I was like her big brother, looked out for her. We shared some really crazy moments, like life moments. And she was always there for me. She promoted the hell out of me when she was out there, like doing her thing, shooting for the biggest companies and stealing box covers. I shot her for Anabolic, and she was shot in 5 movies and got the box cover all 5 times, just to give you an idea how popular and how she looked. Anyways, so she just reached out to say thank you for being a good friend while she was in the industry, looking out for her, being like a big brother. And then she got really emotional and started crying about how she was following my health issues and my hospitalization in all my posts, but she was too afraid to reach out because like she got me like really teary eyed, talking about how she was so afraid I was gonna die, so she was afraid to reach out because like it would have been like too personal and too close. Anyways, like I'm getting all choked up thinking about it as well because I was there when she was going through a lot of really, really personal things. So when she reached out to me to tell me, first, sorry for not reaching out because she was too afraid, but then thanking me for just being there for her. So I'm going to probably try to get her to do a podcast, which would be great because she's got stories for days while she was in the industry. A lot of stories. But I wanted to talk a little bit about my days at Anabolic. There's some interesting things, and what really sparked me wanting to do this was we were talking about a series I directed called A2M, The Art of Ass to Mouth. Yes, it's The Art of Ass to Mouth. And I was basically telling one of the performers the stories, some of the stories, because everybody wants to hear my crazy stories from my days in the industry. And a lot of them want to hear the gross stories. So I'm like, okay, well, here are the gross stories. It's like revisiting the moments in my career. Oy vey. So I talked a lot about the series A2M, The Art of Ass to Mouth. Now, I didn't create that series. I came to Anabolic with this series established, and there was another director who was their head director doing the series. My job when I first came to the company, they wouldn't even let me direct. Chris, the owner of Anabolic, wouldn't let me direct. He just made me edit, and go to sets and light for people. And one director teach him how to white balance a camera. This is how bad it was. So I'm going to set with directors who don't know how to fucking light, and then I'm going to set with directors who can't even fucking white balance a camera, and I could shoot circles around every single one of them, and I'm editing their movies and compilations and then lighting for them. Anyways, so this director was doing this series called Ass to Mouth, A2M. Oh, see, my phone's on because I'm afraid that I'm going to miss messages. Um, anyways, so they finally let me direct when Sue came to back to the company. She was Chris's ex-wife, and she came in as a production manager, and she was right away like, why the hell isn't Ivan directing? Nobody at Anabolic called me Ivan. They called me Slava, but my real name. Why the hell isn't Slava directing? What the fuck? So they let me take over a series called Sweet Cheeks. So the first scene I shot was with Alexis Texas. My goodness, this was probably she was brand new, brand spanking new. So I don't know how long she's been in the industry. I don't know, 12, 13, 14 years. And I shot really creative tease. We shot this really cool tease. And I shot it, I edited it, and the owner and Sue were like, holy shit, we haven't seen stuff like this at the company, because it was a Gonzo company. Scene started, and they did their thing and moved on. And I wanted to make the girl look pretty, so I would shoot a lot of tease to, like, the whole thing was like, let's make her look beautiful and let the viewer get really into her. And then she gets run through it. That's how they called it, because they were like quote unquote energetic scenes. Then she gets run through it, So you have like this beauty part of it, and then there's just raw energetic sex comes right after the pretty tease. So they asked the other directors, like, hey, especially this head director, you need to start shooting shit like this, not the garbage you've been shooting with really terrible lighting and shadows and reflections and TVs behind the scene of like the camera guy walking around, all that nonsense. And eventually he was so pissed, he quit, he left. The best part was, I'm a gift giver, so people that I'm close to, I'll share stuff with them. I'll give them gifts and things like that. And when he got fired and left the office, the only thing that was left in his office were all the gifts I got him. And I'm like, yo, I didn't get you fired. Your shitty work got you fired, and your bad attitude got you fired, and you being a creepy ass motherfucker got you fired. Because he's one of those directors, creepy ass motherfuckers. So I didn't care. I was like, cool, I'm just taking my stuff back and put it in my office. No big deal. So I took over the series A2M. And the last one he did, and the company was really upset with him because with Anabolic was really, really strict on how movies are done. 16 movies, every DVD or VHS, just a movie, had 6 scenes in it. 6 scenes in at least 3 hours. That always goes in the box. 6 scenes, at least 3 hours. And he turned the movie in. That was 3 hours, and the last of the series, 6 scenes, 3 hours, and only 26 ass to mouths in 6 scenes. So that averages out to about what, like a little bit over, like four and a quarter, four and a third, whatever, ass to mouths per scene, which sounds like a lot, right? I mean, because basically, for you people who don't know what ass to mouth is, during the sex scene, all the scenes have to be anal, so all the girls have to do anal, and it's usually probably because it would be a better scene if it's 2-on-1. So the scenes cost a lot of money because you would have 2 guys and 1 girl, or you would have 2 girls and 1 guy. But it was always like, for most part, it was a 3-way. So what happens is when the guy is doing anal with a girl, he pulls his wiener out and the girl takes it in the mouth. So that's what's called ass to mouth. And in our case, it was the art of ass to mouth. So there was only 26 in his last movie of the series, and he got fired and they were really upset over it. So they asked me to take over. Now the good thing is, I have a really good reputation with the talent because I treat them like human beings, and I'm respectful, and I'd rather inconvenience myself than others, and blah 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 blah. So the performers came to me and they're like, "We're going to make sure you're going to have the best ass to mouth movie in this entire series." All right. And by the way, most of the performers didn't like that guy. He was making way too much money, and he was undercutting people way too much on rates. It was kind of pathetic. Use this power with male talent to get deals. Use this power with women to try to get laid. Bullshit. People like him, I'm glad now people like him, would be like completely out of the industry. Back then, it wasn't like that, unfortunately. So I take over the series. And here's a little porno 101 for you. When you're shooting ass to mouth, you always need to see the dick. Meaning, when it goes in the hole, in the poop shooter, and it comes out of the poop shooter, it goes in the mouth, into the mouth. That's ass to mouth. But the key thing, especially with Anabolic and companies like that really cared about, we're catering to A2M fans. Well, what has to be done is when it comes out of the poop shooter, the guy walks in front of the camera. Not only he walks in front of the camera, he walks with his junk facing the camera. So you're always seeing it leave the poop shooter and walks by the camera, so you always see it, walks to the girl's face and puts it in her other hole, in her mouth. Now, the key thing is he never touches it. She never touches it. So the girl's supposed to have her hands back, and the guy's not allowed to touch it. The reason for that is that you see the entire action, the entire ass to mouth action, from ass to mouth without cleaning it. Because if the guy touches it, or he walks with his back to the camera, or behind the girl, there's potential of him cleaning it. And if the girl grabs it, usually the trick the girl would do is she would grab it by the head, and she would pull her hand back towards the base, whoosh, down the shaft, meaning she's cleaning it. See, even the paramedics are agreeing. The fire trucks, I should say. So that's the trick, is that she grabs it by the head, she pulls down the shaft, and she cleans the dick, then puts it in her mouth. Well, with Anabolic and companies like that, and I'm sure the big Gonzo companies, that was a no-no. So no, hands go behind your back, and you just take it, boom, right in your mouth. Now that you're visualizing this, think about that. So comes out the poop shooter in front of the camera, wiener to the lens, into the girl's mouth, right? Now, take a wild guess how many ass to mouths my first movie of this series was. Now, the other guy's was 26 for 6 scenes. I'm going to give you a second to think about it. And the total amount was 96. Yes, you heard that right. 96 astronauts, 70 more than his. Now you might say that's too much. Sure, because if you think about it, 96. Let's have 96, right? In 6 scenes. So that's what about? Gosh, I can't even do the math right now. It's about 17, 16, 16 per scene. 16 astronauts per scene. Now, so if you think about it, if a scene is 30 minutes, then you're doing two astronauts. You're doing an astronaut every 2 minutes. And and the thing is, not the entire scene is anal. So it's really like a production line sometimes. Boom, 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 boom. Yes, and you're thinking to yourself, or you're saying it like, oh, that's gross. That's a lot. It is a lot. But then also back then, unlike now, back then when you're doing a series and it's titled a certain way, that's what you're doing. That was the beauty of pornography back then. There were pornographers who cared about, here's what I'm doing, and I'm catering to that specific audience. Now, whoever's watching Ass to Mouth wants to see Ass to Mouth, right? Otherwise, if you're not into anal scenes, you're not buying a movie called Ass to Mouth. If you're not into Ass to Mouth, you're not buying a movie that's called The Art of Ass to Mouth. So with us, it was like, we're doing an ass to mouth movie. We're going to fill it with a lot of ass to mouth. Literally, we're going to fill it with a lot of ass to mouth. And we did. I mean, that's a lot. And, and the thing is, when I was shooting it, I wasn't hoping to get to 100, but when I started editing, I'm like, oh my God, that's a lot. So I would literally, I was editing, I was marking off how many ass to mouth. Here's another one. And once in a while, you have to trim stuff out because, not every single one of them is, legal. Let's just leave it at that, and the fortunate part is when you're shooting camera and everything's moving around, you miss it. Because if you see it, you're like, oh, we need to stop, baby wipe. And same goes for the girl. Sometimes she's in the zone. The guy is performing her in the zone, and we miss it. Then you catch it in the edit, and you're like, oh. And that's the one thing about when you're shooting series like this or scenes like this, you always have to be on guard for blood or poop. So those things are very crucial. You would hope you would catch it when you're shooting it, but sometimes in the heat of the moment, for everybody, you miss it. And then you're like, oh my God, how long was that there? Oh my God, did you just swallow that? So yeah, you get quite a bit of that kind of stuff. So the first one had 96 A2Ms. The next one, I did 2 of these. The next one had 98. I think it was 98. And the reason it didn't get to 100 was because one of the girls had a couple that we missed and I caught in the edit. And it was like, oh man, it could have been like, how cool would it have been to put on the box of 100 A2Ms. But that was one of the series that I did that I was, I'm not a big fan of shooting, just because of things like that, or dirty, bloody prolapse, which I actually am going to do a podcast later with Leia Falcon, discussing the art of anal, or whatever you want to call it, painting the walls with anal. So we're gonna go more into the other aspects of anal, but with this ass to mouth movie A2M, it was an adventure, because what happens is with that much A2M per scene, there's a lot of ins and outs, meaning there's a lot of gaping, meaning there's a lot of potential for dirty, there's a lot of potential for tearing, there's potential for a lot of things to happen, because when you're just doing the scene of pumping and not pulling out, it all kind of stays in. But when you start pulling out and walking over around and the next person and so on, that is a lot. That is a lot of opening and closing, a lot of suction, a lot of, again, possible for tearing and everything else, for, a person to be dirty. A series like that, when you book a girl, you tell the agent, this is the series. Does she do A2M? Because some girls won't do A2M. And you just kind of like, explain this to the agent that this is like important for the movie, for the scene. And if the girl's not comfortable, we just won't book her. And if she is, now she knows that she's going to be doing a bunch of A2M, so she'll be really professional in a sense where she'll maintain her body a certain way. Some girls don't eat for half a day. Some girls don't eat for a day. Some girls eat and then they're fine. It all depends on their body. And the girls who do stuff like that, they know how their body works. And that's it. Like, we had a contra girl at Extreme that ate burgers while in makeup before her anal scenes. And she's like, oh, it's not going to digest in time for me to do anal, so I'm fine. But she also drank coffee, which was a problem because then it becomes runny and, things like that. But yeah, it was an interesting series to do. One of the scenes I remember, oh my goodness, it was kind of brutal. It was two girls and a guy, and the girls were down. Like, the girls were like team players. We shot them a lot, and they were like, sure, like, we'll do each other's ass to mouth. I'm like, are you sure? Because most talent won't do that. They will not, because they're trusting that the other girl is professional enough to keep it clean. Keep herself clean, keep herself to a point where there's not going to be any mess and things like that. So now the other performer is completely dependent on that. So I remember shooting one of the scenes. Oh my goodness! And the worst part is, it was an anal cream pie, and the other girl's like, she could shoot it out into my mouth. And I'm just like, wait, are you sure? Because now she's pushing and you don't know. And she's like, no, I'm cool, I'm down. So what happens is, oh my Lord. So we do the anal cream pie, and the other girl lays down underneath. Like, so she's like basically like she's laying on her back, and the other one's kind of squatting over her and pushing. And God, so she's pushing, and and starts drizzling out, and then all of a sudden, there's like bloop, this little Snickers falls on the other girl's chin. Yeah, literally, poof. And I'm just like, oh, what do we do now, right? So I bring the camera up close, past the chin. It's in the shot, like I saw it on camera, and I go past the mouth, past the chin, to a close-up shot of the mouth. It's like the angle was off, but I was like, well, I'd rather have like a messed up angle and missing certain things in the shot, but definitely want to miss what's on the chin. And as soon as we're done, we're like, baby wipe, baby wipe, baby wipe. And when I was editing, what I had to do was, when I knew that part was coming, I slowly zoomed past the chin. So when the stuff came out, boom, you don't see it. But those are the hazards, those are the hazards where you're shooting scenarios like that. And, any director in the industry who would share stories like this would tell you the same thing. Those are the biggest obstacles. And if you're squeamish as a director like I am, you're constantly like, oh, please let it be okay, please let it be okay, please let it be okay. And for most part it is. I did a series called Teenage Anal Princess at Anabolic. I guess this will be my all anabolic anal stories. So I did a series called Teenage Anal Princess. I took over for that series again when basically every director that was at the company when I came in and was an editor, once they started shooting and they brought Tony T back to shoot a movie or two, they got rid of all the directors. Those guys didn't know what they were doing. They didn't know how to light. One of the guys, unfortunately, was taught by the elder director how to light and how to shoot. And it was just like nonsense to see how they were lighting and how their shadows were covering up the scenes as they walked in front of the lighting and things like that. It was brutal. It was brutal to edit. It was brutal to watch and understand how much money these people were making, especially back then. The money that was like flying out of the sky into their pockets, and they still couldn't get better with their camera work, with their lighting. And back then it was easy. There was no storylines. There was no softcore. These dudes didn't even shoot tease. It was just like scene starts. The way they did their stills, on camera flash. You were lucky if they brought strobes. And it's not like even if they brought strobes, they just set one on each side up and just blew out the room, and that was it. It was as simple as it got, and still these guys shot garbage. Anyways, enough of ranting about that stuff. So when Tony and I took over, we started picking series that we want to do. He was taking these series, I was taking this, so I was given because they knew that like I was really good with new talent, with a young talent, that I wasn't like the creepy director like the previous dude. I was going to look out for the girls, and I was going to make sure things were done right and done cool and creative and things like that. So I took over Brigham Young, which was like, like the University of Brigham Young, but it was spelled Brigham, like Young, and they used the same font as Brigham Young, which I think they kind of had a little lawsuit for a while or something like that. And Teenage Anal Princess. Now, Teenage Anal Princess is difficult because, again, these days, a girl at 30 dresses up as a teen and she's playing a teen. Not back then, not with Anabolic. If you're shooting Brigham Young, they're 18 and 19. If you're shooting Teenage Anal Princess, they're 18 or 19 doing anal. Now, think about this. 16 movie, all teens doing anal. So it was a tough series to shoot. So what would happen is we would have to sit and wait as soon as, and all the agents knew Anabolic shoots teens who do anal. And this is where actually Missy Stone, the reason I'm doing this podcast about Anabolic, Missy Stone, when she first came out, I shot her first 3 scenes. The first one was for Brigham Young. The second one was for Teenage Anal Princess. I remember the box cover still. But with Teenage Anal Princess, the tough part was you're shooting new girls or fairly new girls because they're 18 or 19 doing anal. We did one, I think, one of them, which was all brand new girls. I'm sorry, not brand, all doing for their first anal scene. And that's tough, because their first anal scene, they don't know how to do an enema. You have to explain to them how to do an enema. You have to be really careful because you don't want them to be hurt. The key thing always was catching the first time the girl does anal on camera. So you're getting a wide shot, or it's where you frame her face in. You don't do those stills until after. Unless the girl's really uncomfortable, then you do some stills to warm her up. But the whole point is to get that first reaction. That's just why it's Teenage Anal Princess. And it was brutal because sometimes we booked girls to shoot the scenes that we didn't want to shoot for anything else. But we're like, oh, she's a teen, she's 18 or 19, and she's doing anal. We have to shoot her. So you would get like a yin and yang of like, here's an amazing performer, here's one that's in it because she needs to pay her car bill, and just doing it for that. So she's completely not into it or in pain or whatever it may be. And I remember shooting one girl, I forget her name. She was like this little rich white girl from Calabasas. And she was literally doing it probably to rebel against her parents. She was doing, I forget her name, but she was doing a girl scene with Mackenzie Pierce. And this girl's never done anal. This girl was 19 with big, giant fake boobs already. Cute, like blonde girl. And so I brought, so you have like a kit of butt plugs. You start with a small one, and then it just kind of works its way up. So the girl, when she's on set, she's kind of warming herself up. So she's putting different butt plugs in depending on the size of her butthole to loosen it up, or just walks around with the butt plug in her butt. This girl, I tell her like you gotta stretch out. She's like, okay, I'll get to it later. And then we had a butt plug just sitting on the chair, and she goes, I got it, and she jumps up and lands right on it. And I was watching Mackenzie, and I was standing there, and we both like, oh. And she landed right on it, and she was fine, which is really weird because we're like, wait a minute, is this your first anal? And she's like, yeah. We're like, there's no way you could have done that without screaming bloody murder. I'm really confused what's happening right now. But we shot her, and the best part is about a year later, I was walking through the big Westfield Topanga Mall, and there she is walking towards me with like her, like I assume grandma was like 2 elderly ladies and somebody else. And I'm just like, oh shit, that's her and her family. And she sees me and she turns pale, like she just saw a ghost. It just looks away and walks past me. And I wasn't going to say anything, I was like, oh, well, there it is. And by that point she was out of the industry. But that was a pretty funny scenario, because that's the problem is like, if you live in the Valley, you're going to run into these people. That's the beauty of living in Hollywood. I rarely run into people in the industry. And living in Vegas, really rarely run into people in the industry. Now, a little bit more because of all the content shooters, who are quote unquote porn stars in their head. But You see those people, which is fine, Um, so the one scene I remember that stood out, and I even put it in the trailer. I'm not sure which Teenage Little Princess number it was. It was one of the last ones, if not the last one. What the way these movies work is, like there was no tease. It was just like I would shoot an interview with each girl beforehand, just to get their personality, and then the scene would start. And after the scene, we would give them a tiara, we would give them a sash that said Teenage Adult Princess and a bouquet of roses. That was every scene ended like that. Like, here you go. Now you're a teenage adult princess. You got the sash that says that you got a tiara on your head, and you get these flowers. So we shoot this girl, and I shot her like I think one other time. And again, like with me being so personable on set, a lot of talent's real comfortable with me. So it becomes like a big joke fest on set most of the time. So on this particular day, I forget the girl's name, but I remember the guys. It was James Dean and it was John Strong. So the scene was fantastic, and before the scene we were shooting shit. Like during the interview, it was all fun, and with every movie I did for Anabolic, not every, but a lot of them, I would put myself at the end of the trailer. So basically, what it would be like it would be maybe a reflection of me or silhouette of me or something to that effect, or maybe like I can't catch myself in reflection of a mirror. One time I caught myself in reflection of a big giant boob that was oiled up, and I would like either do a freeze frame or slow down and say directed by Ivan. Well, in this particular scene was something that I've never had happen before, and I knew I had to put it in the credits. And the funny thing is, when I posted it online, the trailer, I got a bunch of people going, I cannot believe that you're comfortable posting this. I'm like, whatever, man. Like, we're all in the industry trying to have a good time. It is what it is. Be a good sport and do your thing. So what happened was, at the end of the scene, she is drenched. She is covered, like her whole face is covered with, man goo. We give her a sash. We give her a tiara. And then we hand her the roses. So she's holding these roses. And I'm just like making fun of her for her face being just so covered up. And then I go to somebody, I go, hey, can somebody please clean her up? And James Dean comes up and he grabs one of the rose petals and starts wiping her face with the rose petal, which was like kind of cool, right? And then he like leaves it on like her forehead or somewhere on her face. So I'm laughing and I'm still shooting. This is all, on video. She grabs this rose petal. She wipes some more jizz off her face and slaps it right onto my side of my face, right on my cheek. And I'm just like, oh, did she just really do that? So I take the camera from her face and I flip it so you could see it on my face now. And I'm like, oh, and I have this look on my face like my face is about to get eaten up by like super sperm. And behind me walks up John Strong. It's such a perfect shot, because it goes from her slapping this thing on my face. I flip the camera over to me. So now the camera's upside down because I just kind of flipped the camera over. And then John Strong walks in behind me with a baby wipe and just baby wipes my face. Oh, so gently. And it says like directed by Ivan. And it was over. That was the trailer shot. That was the end of the scene shot. For some people that might get offended, they might get freaked out. I'm like, what's good for the movie, it's good for the movie. It's funny. It is what it is. It's like, it happened. So what am I going to do now? Like, I'm going to freak out on this girl? No, it's just part of it's part of being what you do. You're a fireman, you might get burned. You do porn, once in a while you might get jizz on you. It is what it is. It wasn't the first time or the last time that stuff like that happened. Not on my face, but in general, you grab something like, oh, what is that? Things like that. So those are my two movies that I did that were like specific anal movies at Anabolic. And there were a lot more stories I could share from it, but those are the ones that really stood out. It was an adventure working at that company, and I'm going to do a long podcast about it because there were so many ups and downs and so many crazy stories for such a big company with so much drama. It was stupid, insane between Anabolic and Diabolic. Yeah. But those are my two stories that sparked by Missy Stone calling me and being so um how can I even put it? She was just very. She made my day. Let's put it that way. I was kind of down, and then she called out of the blue. I didn't even recognize the number because she got a new number, and I'm like, I'm just gonna pick it up right now. I just finished working out, and I was like, I was tired. I'm like, okay, maybe it's somebody that I need to talk to, and I picked up, and boom. And she goes, look, I called you when you were in the hospital, actually, from this number. I'm like, even if I don't know you, I don't know if I would pick that because I was so out of it. But speaking of that, in 3 weeks or 2.5 weeks or so, it's going to be 1 year since I was hospitalized. It all started at the end of September. It started either September 30th or August 1st of last year. For 5 days, I kind of dealt with it myself, and then it was too much, and went to the hospital, and then the story, everything happened. So I'm going to be editing bunch of clips and pictures from my whole experience and throwing them up on YouTube with dates, just as a reminder to me and to educate people on, like, hey man, when your body is telling you certain things, you listen to it. You have one body, you have one mind, and try to keep them both healthy. Sometimes your mind does fucked up things to you, and you gotta find a pretty good place. Sometimes your body, warns you, and you don't listen, and you have to. So I went through a nightmare, but it was a positive nightmare because it taught me a lot, and don't regret any of it. But it's coming up on a year since I was hospitalized, so I will be posting my podcast I did in March from the hospital bed, about my experience. So I need to post that. And I'm going to post videos and photos on YouTube, with maybe narration over it, as a learning lesson for some. It's going to be pretty emotional. It's going to be pretty intense. If you're squeamish, it might be a little hard to watch, because there are some brutal videos and pictures from what happened to me. But again, at the end of the day, I'm still standing really well now. And it's all a learning experience, to see the before and after is fantastic. So that's it. I'm done for this podcast. I think I might be doing another one later today. And I'm hopefully heading to Vegas mid to late next week, depending on the fires out here and out there. And I'm hoping to do some more podcasts out there. It would be fantastic to get the podcast up and going. I have a bunch that I recorded that I need to post. Sorry for all of you who are listening to this podcast that I haven't. It's been a brutal few weeks, physically, mentally. It's been draining, but I'm back doing this because I really enjoy sharing stories. That's it. I don't know what else to say. Oh, except football starts. NFL started. There's a Thursday game, and tomorrow's Sunday, and we're going to have lots more football. Best time of the year. Have a good day.